Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me this week is Vince Ning, co-founder and CEO of Nabis. Thank you very much for joining me today, Vince.
Thanks for having me, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving us a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Vince, I always like to start with a little bit of background. How did you first become involved in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, maybe helpful to start a step back. So, my career started out in the tech industry, in the engineering field, and while I was living in the Bay Area, I just sold my last company. Cannabis was all over the news in 2017, 2018 around the state legalizing, and I actually had a friend. I was looking to learn more about the space since I was sort of looking for my next thing to tackle. My passion really lies in applying technology, specifically software, to just new industries that can gain leverage from it as much as possible, where there's high impact. And so cannabis was one of those, personal, I had a personal affinity towards, cannabis. Obviously smoked a lot of weed in college, and it was just something that I thought was really, it just made sense, because, previous to this, I'd been building B2B SaaS tools. This was one of those domains that you could feel and touch and see the product as well, and see the actual physical impact of what you were building for. And I had a friend from college who had quit his job from McKinsey, moved up to Humboldt, and started growing weed. And he was the only guy I knew. And when I say that, what I really mean is he's the only guy I trusted in the industry, because it was, just coming out into the legal space. There was a lot of, you just didn't know who you'd run into. So I sat him down at, a bar called Zeitgeist in San Francisco when I was living there. And he basically told me a lot about the industry, the people that were in the industry. And he basically just sent me on a bunch of deliveries to meet some of his supply chain partners. So everyone from, the people he bought flower from, the people he extracted and co-packed with, and the retailers he was selling to across the state. So it was kind of also, my way of learning about California state, and all the beauty of it. Was driving through, Highway 5 up and down the state from Oakland to San Diego every week, sleeping in Korean spas for cheap, driving through like orange fields in Fresno. It was honestly quite idyllic. And so I didn't really feel like it was such a painful experience, but it taught me a lot about the industry, and that's kind of how I got into the space.
So as you're learning about the industry, when do you have that aha moment?
I think the big aha moment comes from, making that first dollar. So ever since I started doing deliveries for my friend, he just paid me pretty much at cost with a little bit of margin for my time. And so, it was a win-win there, and the volume just kept growing. And then as the volume kept growing, I think he had a strong incentive to split costs and lower his costs for deliveries. And it wasn't like I was charging that much, but, just to cover gas and labor costs to drive 9 hours from, Oakland down to San Diego will still cost you a lot, and back, without, deliveries usually are one way. There's usually a deadhead truck the other way, unless you have volume going the other direction. And so, from that vantage point, it became clear that he needed to split costs with other people. And so he just, introduced me to a couple of his friends who are also brands, growing out of the same farm. And that was kind of how the business started, just one brand at a time. And, as my work started becoming more burdensome, I had to start automating things, and built a lot of the initial software at night, just while I wasn't on the road, and then implementing it day to day, to make my life easier as a driver.
Okay, so you started building the platform as just to help yourself as sort of your own assistant?
Basically, yeah. At first, it was just to automate things like order entry, delivery scheduling, collections, order status updates and payment updates. And then as tracking, the bar kept getting higher. So, a lot of compliance requirements started getting layered into the space. Track and trace became implemented in California. There were a lot more licensing requirements too. So, products had to have labels on them that had all the test results. It had basic QR codes that signified where they came from and batch and SKU IDs. So all of that kind of started getting layered, and essentially all the standards for operating became really burdensome just to do one delivery. And so the platform started automating that a lot. And as the platform grew, or rather as the brands on our platform grew, they started needing more things. They wanted, we were just as a byproduct of doing fulfillment and collections, amassing a ton of data around product trends and payment efficacy and credit worthiness. And so, we ended up launching a financing service for brands and retailers. We ended up launching a wholesale marketplace to be able to help brands be able to find the right buyers and doors that they weren't in yet. And so the platform is really rounded out to all of those things. It's become really just, the backbone of the platform is now the data, actually, just given how much history we have and the richness of it.
How quickly is all this happening from when you realize or recognize the opportunity to building it into the platform?
Yeah, I mean, from having that tech mindset and having built companies before, having worked at large companies like Microsoft before, I kind of had that predisposition already going in. I wanted to build a scalable business. I wanted to think, how can this not just scale, but also be defensible? And being able to collect that data was super powerful for us. And there wasn't, until we got to a significant scale. Now we do over $1 billion worth of transactions a year and fulfilled product on a wholesale basis, which is like 5% of the U.S. market. So if you think about right now, we're in California, Nevada, and New York. We're about 30% of California, 50% of Nevada, 15% of New York. So the concentration of information within each market is significant. With that, people really tend to rely on it to make decisions. And that was always something that, we thought, hey, as we scale, how do we build moats and defensibility around our business? And we didn't know exactly when the data would become, super useful and practical to make decisions based off of. But I would say it's after around, after we got to around like 10 to 15% of the market, people started really seeing, the power of the information.
So how are operators using that information to their benefit?
Yeah, so I'll give you a quick and dirty example. So, we collect, money on behalf of all of our brands after they get sold. And through the collections efforts, we get to see how creditworthy a retailer is based on how on time they pay and whether they pay in full. It's pretty much as simple as that. And we've basically created our own proprietary credit rating system that mimics the FICO scoring system that we've rated every single retailer. And it's very transparent. If you pay your bills, that's like accounts for half the meat grinder equation that calculates your score. And so based on that, brands, at least when they have the wherewithal to say, hey, like when I'm booking my order in Nabis to send out for deliveries, before I send it out for deliveries, I can see the credit rating in this sort of like stoplight format, red, yellow, green, and there's like a little bit more granularity. There's basically 5 statuses to a retailer and whether they're creditworthy or not. And we never block an order because ultimately the transaction is being decided between the supplier and the retailer. But the data certainly helps guide decision making for suppliers when it comes to, say, making a decision on whether they want to sell this amount of product on COD or net 30 or 60 or 90, and how tight they want those controls to be.
Well, I mean, that's incredibly powerful. Are the people with the, I guess, lesser scores, are they aware of that? Like, can they bring their own rating up?
Yeah, some people they used to follow up with us to ask because brands would say, "I can't sell to you because Nabis's rating says that your score is really low." Retailers would follow up with us sometimes, albeit pretty angrily. But at the end of the day, they understand. I mean, it's not rocket science that if you don't pay your bills, your score is going to go down. And so based on that, we tell them, hey, you know pay your bills for this amount of time. We'll take you off that sort of naughty list, so to speak. Or if you set up like a payment plan with us, we can artificially bring your score up until you pay that down. And so, those sorts of things definitely, help create compromises so that brands get to sell more comfortably to retailers, and retailers at least get to continue to buy from the brands that they need on shelves.
So, with an engineering background, are you ever completely satisfied with what you've built?
No. Yeah, I was actually just saying this on our executive weekly sync yesterday that, our finance team was asking, hey Vince, like when do you think we can stop investing in our engineering team? Because we've built the platform already. Can we just scale to all 50 states and use the same software? And I think the answer is yes and no. I mean, I think with the existing set of services, we can, but every state has its own slight nuances with respect to how operating standards are. For instance, some states require two drivers, some states require one. Some states have a two-tier system, some have a three, some have a vertical model. And so in each of those, there's just tweaks that need to be made in the overall software on a state-by-state basis where even the fields on a manifest like the compliance paperwork need to be updated when we ship out products to include both drivers' names or only one, and so that sort of stuff always requires a little bit of tweaks. The main chunks we haven't built yet that we really want to is, we've basically built a fulfillment platform. But if you think about Amazon or Shopify, they have different tiers of services. Some for enterprise brands that want, that higher quality of service. They want, better financing. They're doing more volume, so they should get better rates and they should get better customer support. And then there's some brands that want to continue to self-distribute, but use Nabis's reach to just as like a marketing service. And so, from that standpoint, we'll charge differently, but the software that's needed to be built will inevitably look different for different use cases. So, the list goes on in terms of ideas of how to, for instance, add AI to order entry and make quality of life easier for the existing users as well. And so that's all stuff that's coming down the pike in the next year or two. And so the list never ceases to finish. And I would say that as the market continues to develop and mature as well, we're starting to see that some brands just their orders get huge now because some brands are pretty big. And so, brands have cited that it used to take them like a couple minutes to build out an order on our platform, and now it takes them 30 minutes. And so we need to figure out a better way for them to be able to do that. So yeah, the use cases are a little different as the industry continues to grow up too.
Well, and if you want to maintain that same agility that you built the company with, you need that engineering prowess on staff.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It used to be a pretty big cost center for us, and now just by the scale that we're operating at, the like any small little tweak, even to like an internal tool, like a dashboard that our ops team can use to figure out to lower, let's say, mispack rates by 1%, that that yields dividends down to our bottom line. It's like saying, Facebook squeezed out an extra percent of margin. That's like billions of dollars for them. So we're kind of getting to a nice scale where we can see very material absolute dollar differences, even though the percentage might be small.
So you're currently have a big presence in California. You're also in Nevada and New York. How do you plan to grow organically in those areas? And what are some of the other states that you have your eyes on next?
Yeah, the way in existing markets, the way we've always thought about growing is let's provide the right level of service to the market at that stage. So, let's not go and launch marketplace and financing tools when the market just launched yesterday. Let's start with just fulfillment and then layer in more sophisticated value-added services over time as the market matures and needs those things. So it really is like an iterative, like we know what we need to build as the market matures, but we don't go we don't go overboard in terms of like overbuilding the infrastructure. And so in order to continue to fit the market and grow with the market in these existing markets is um, providing not just the operational infrastructure, but now it's the digital plumbing for the industry. So some of that comes down to how can we not just help brands, but help retailers be able to intake faster. So, we're building out like POS integration so that we can marry the data between retailer sell-through information to our wholesale sell-in information. And so that provides a better sense. For instance, like some retailers who are using this tool now have lowered their working capital needed to purchase inventory by about half. So that's, millions of dollars saved for a large store that they can then go use to launch a new location or buy a distressed business and continue to expand. So those efficiency gains that we provide to the broader ecosystem, not just ourselves, is really where we create lock-in. But it's a win-win. It should help everyone create efficiencies and optimizations across the supply chain, and that's how we're all going to win together. So yeah, that's how we continue to deepen our trenches. Our entrenchment in the industry, both just on the operational level, but also the digital side too.
So what is your cost structure? How is it a SaaS model, or are people paying per seat, or how are operators paying for your services?
Yeah, so they pay on the software side, they pay a monthly SaaS fee, a few $100 per month, and that's pretty much it for the mandatory. We don't charge per seat. We've thought about it, but at the end of the day, it's kind of just value extractive. I think as we launch more enterprise services like integrations and such, we can consider that because those will require a different level of maintenance with external services. But for now, we just charge that one software fee. For the factoring service, which is our short-term financing service, we charge a couple percentage points per invoice that we factor. So that's basically just like a cost of capital plus a margin because we're taking on the default risk of that invoice. And then in the fundamental like fulfillment platform, we also just charge, a high single digit, like average around like 9-10% take rate on each delivery. So that's how it works. So, it's basically a fulfillment service, then stacking on top of it, you have like the value added services as well.
Yeah, like a service fee with each value added service.
Exactly. Could have said
Okay.
that.
No, it's just to put it into my understanding.
Yeah.
No, so California recently threatened with a significant excise tax. Michigan recently passed a 24% increase. Why do you think the industry is seeing some of these attacks on the wholesale side of the business?
I would say a lot of it is I don't know the right term. It's not coming to me, but it's effects that people in previous positions of power have made. And for good reason. I mean, I think before the cannabis industry has never had its big windfall from legislative change. So we've always had to fight tooth and nail for little tax rate improvements here and there to continue to whittle down the black market and make legal products more cost competitive or price competitive to illicit products. And so, for instance, in California, back in 2021, 2022, there was a bill, I believe it was AB 195 that was passed that essentially lowered taxes to the point they're at now. It used to be 24% of wholesale, and then it lowered it to like 15. And the state was like, okay, we hear you, you're hurting as an industry. Let's lower the taxes. And the industry's argument was that if you lower taxes, you'll collect more. Because right now it's so onerous, people are going out of business and you're actually missing out. And so given that was the sort of how things mathed out, the state said, okay, let's say within the next 3 years, by 2025, if if tax revenues do hit our minimum threshold so that it's revenue neutral, then we won't hike up the tax rate. But if, what you're saying is untrue and we still can't collect the taxes, then we will still have to hike it back up to then basically make up for the tax, the taxes that they didn't collect in years past. And so that was what the industry was staring down the barrel of, which was, it was kind of like a aftershock. It was like a ripple effect of a benefit from a couple years ago. But, the industry is still not in the place that it needs to be, where everyone's, profitable and can pay their taxes on time and in full. And so, it does seem like the industry got really aligned again to basically tell the state, hey, we can't suffer a tax hike still. And so, that ended up bringing things back down, and Newsom signed that bill into law. Michigan, that's a different story. We're not in Michigan, so I'm not too familiar with why that tax hike actually ended up passing through and stuck. But, I think every state has its own, set of, past decisions that have affected the current environment.
True. I mean, sometimes I see like what's happening in Michigan, and they want to use this tax to raise, I don't know, they just pick a number out of a hat, like $420 million to get real cute about it. And it's
Yeah.
like, I feel like there's not a real understanding of how the market is working. And it's kind of treated as like a petty cash fund.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. I mean, everyone sees cannabis. I think a lot of governments are sold by the initial lobbyists or, initial advocates on you're gonna bring in more taxes and lower crime. And so what the state sees or government see is just dollar signs. So it's just about like, how much to like increase or decrease that lever. And yeah, and sometimes, if the industry isn't kicking and screaming, they're just going to keep raising it until someone says something about it. And so it is kind of like that, which is quite unfortunate. So hopefully, rescheduling can change some of that and help bring the effective tax rate down at the federal level, and bring back some much needed, non-dilutive capital back to the industry into the hands of hardworking cannabis operators.
Think that's actually going to happen?
I've never seen anything at the federal level happen around cannabis except in the other way. But I'm hopeful. I kind of have to be.
Do you have any tools, maybe just that you use internally, that can kind of put up red flags as to when you may think a customer or an operator might be in some trouble?
Yeah, I mean, there's always telltale signs, particularly on the retail side. That one is just if they start sliding out on their payments, that's pretty bad. And then we also corroborate with other folks in the industry, other suppliers too. So there's a little bit of co-opetition happening where, we'll just make some calls, check in with others who are large suppliers to the same stores and see if they're getting the same runaround. And in which case, like, then something's surely wrong with that store. If it's just us, then perhaps like we did something wrong that needs where the partnership fell through and they decided not to pay, whatever it may be. That's kind of the situation. And yeah, I mean, on the brand side of things, the signs across the platform are just really churn rate. So, in California, churn rate hasn't skyrocketed too much this year, but small brands do kind of come and go. And when brands leave our platform, more than they have in previous years, they it becomes, it definitely is telling of how much shelf space is left on the market, open shelf space. But in a state like New York or a brand new space, a brand new market like this, there's pretty much like little to no churn, even of small brands that are probably operating at an unprofitable state.
How would you describe the current state of the illicit market in California?
Whew. I mean, it's always hard to estimate. I mean, I've heard estimates in past years, and I haven't heard any changes saying that the illicit market is about 2 to 3 times the size of the legal market still. Again, it's really hard to, basically calculate that number besides counting the number of stores, like black market stores in the industry compared to legal. But I would say in California, there's also been a significant price compression as well across the market for, for raw materials like, raw flowers, bulk, distillate, et cetera. And that that has actually made legal cannabis a bit more price competitive with the illicit market. And so now, it's become, I think that California has bottomed out fairly much. And so with that in mind, I think that the sort of like changeover from the illicit market to the legal market in terms of demand and sales will occur now just over time as the old as behavioral change occurs. People still have their dealer and selling them products on the black market, and as those generations get older, as the dealers get off the streets and find less and less margin, I think things will ultimately fold into the legal market. And so yeah, I think as sad as it is, it requires an economic parity to the illicit market in order for the illicit market to actually go away. Because enforcement itself isn't doing it.
Are you confident in the trajectory of the current legal market in California?
I mean, there's so much demand there that there's I mean, the market size is estimated to be out like 4 to 4.5 bill a year. Um, I think that there's also a lot of operators now who are profitable and getting there. They've really like narrowed the list of retailers they sell to only sell to the best credit ones. They get paid on time, they have stable cash flows, and they're profitable. And so I think that there's just going to be a level of consolidation that occurs in the brand space in California. But I think the legal market, it will fall into the hands of a few operators, like best in class categories, best in class within each category, that can run a sustainable business. But yeah, I don't see it unwinding, just given how big the population is there. It's around like 40 million people.
Well, on the other side, what are you seeing in Nevada? And then what are your expectations for the New York market?
Yeah. I mean, Nevada is very, I guess, it's very MSO heavy, but there's still Las Vegas there, and recreational brands love, being in these sort of like major brand capitals of the world, brand building capitals, with a lot of tourists. And so Vegas is an important market for a lot of folks on our platform, and us being there gives them access, which is great. And they've actually stopped issuing out new distribution licenses a couple of years ago. So, we have one of the few distribution licenses and sustainably operating there as a third party distributor. So yeah, I mean that market, I think we've seen it kind of just in terms of total TAM decline a little bit, but it's probably a function of price compression, but also some demand falling out to neighboring states that where let's say like people in Arizona or New Mexico or Colorado would go to Las Vegas to go, or would go to Nevada to buy products, and then now because those states are legalized, it's taken away some of that demand. New York is, I think the overall market is up and to the right, generally speaking, if you like zoom out. But day to day, there's a lot of volatility because, one day, 100 retailers out of the 400 get slapped with a letter from the governor saying you got to move because you're too close to a school or a church. And then the next day, you have like a bunch of brands inverting products, and then the OCM, like the state regulators come after you, and then some of the suppliers like fall out of the market, and then they want to come back in different ways in a legal format. It's a lot of choppiness as people start to play around with the regs and see where the boundaries are.
One thing that I was curious about was some of the support that you've received. How did you receive backing from Y Combinator?
Yeah, so this was my second time going through Y Combinator. I went through once with my last company already, and so this one was I already known most of the partners. I told my last company, and so I guess, there was a general track record of success there. And applying to YC for us was, I didn't really. I think YC comes down to a few main value props for the founders and for the company. One is there's just like general branding positivity. So it helps with additional funding. It helps with legitimacy and in hiring. And those are the areas that I think our business needed because it was coming from a relatively taboo space at the time, i.e., cannabis. And the other benefits I felt like I already had, which was YC comes with an amazing network. You have like world-class operators you can reach out to at any moment's notice. And it's a real community of founders doing really impactful things. And then the last one is really just the funding opportunity. So yeah, so the hiring and the funding I think were helpful for us.
What are your thoughts on interstate commerce and how that might uh, cause a little bit of a market fluctuation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if it should that pass, I think states will have to do a lot of work overnight to ensure that their domestic intrastate market um, remains sound economically because California is just producing so much cannabis that if they were to ship it out and flood the rest of the country with products, it would really take down a lot of other operators in other states. And so I think a lot of Californians are hopeful for that because they've been billowing up with products that they can't sell anywhere else. Um, but I think that other state markets, there's businesses that have been invested in for a long time. And there's capital, there's lobbyists to protect those markets and the economics of those markets. And so if lower quality products, or sorry, if lower price products at higher qualities comes in, it could really, level off the water tables in a negative way for some parties in some states. So I think states will have to enact certain like import taxes and tariffs in order to protect that margin. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it. For us, like we've always positioned ourselves to ensure that we can operate in interstate world. So for us, like New York and California are kind of the East Coast and West Coast hubs for our company, and we want to essentially build inwards from there. Yeah, that's kind of how we think about it. We don't want redundant warehouses in super adjacent states. For instance, like in New Jersey, we may not need like a huge warehouse because once interstate commerce occurs, we can just drive from our Bronx warehouse and manage the New Jersey warehouse pretty easily. So a lot of it's just ensuring that we don't overbuild prematurely just to be first to market, because there is that sort of like that one eventual outcome in which interstate commerce happens, and then we'd be left with a bunch of redundant infrastructure burdening our business. Yeah, so that's how we think about it.
Is there anything in the industry that keeps you up at night?
Yeah, pretty much everything. Like, I would say there's, the general sustainability of certain operators. Um, I think it's regulation and particularly enforcement, or rather the lack thereof in some cases. Um, I think, and as a result, I think the illicit market still runs at large. Um, I think if I'd love to see some federal change in policy happen because I think that would breathe some life into the industry where it's been so starved of capital for so long, that operators are getting pretty weary. I would say so. Some new life, new capital would really help the space, and be able to combat the illicit market, and that ultimately would be good for public health, just to have tested products on the market, not marketed to children especially too. So that's pretty much where I think that we can get there faster, or how we can get there faster.
You had mentioned the idea of or working towards building AI tools into the platform. What are some of
Yeah.
the things that you're looking at, and do some of these tools stand to threaten your business in any way?
Um, I mean, I would say we're one of those businesses that, just given, like, we're not even just domestic, we're with each state is its own business. We're not too affected by, let's say, tariffs or like AI really disrupting us because we have an operational backbone of the business in each state. And so, and furthermore, like every state, we have to have our own distribution license too. So there's a lot of defensibility in moats, just regulatorily, operationally, and just the general network effects, like contractually as well. We sign long-term agreements with our suppliers. AI actually, in my mind, I think serves to benefit our business significantly more. I would say in the broader Silicon Valley community, there's a general trend of, these VCs and founders now identifying that unless you're building a foundation model like OpenAI, money is not going to just flow into your funnel. If you're just building an AI tool for a specific use case, you actually might be creating more. You probably, it's so competitive that you might not be able to charge as much yourself because your tool is being commoditized, but value of your tool is providing so much more value to the business, the underlying businesses that use them, the customers. And so, given we are an operating business at our core, applying AI actually gives us both, ability to offer AI services to customers, but not only that, build tools for our own internal teams to automate tasks with agents, for instance, or use like machine learning and forecasting tools, or even just overlaying a GPT layer on top of our platform to be able to talk to the data, to be able to make sure that we're forecasting properly and ensuring we have the right capacity to manage the brands we do. So yeah, I think our business can gain a lot of leverage from AI, essentially, more so than the average tech business.
We didn't get into the operational side of the business too much. Could you tell us a little bit about how that works specifically? Are you, when when you sign on partners, are they basically filling your warehouses and then you're distributing it? Or how does that side of the business work?
Yeah. So when brands sign on, they usually plop down and send us about a month to 2 months worth of inventory. So we have that on hand. We have 7 warehouses across those 3 markets I mentioned earlier, several 100,000 square feet of space, and it's all refrigerated, containered. We have cold storage if you need it as well, and it's like end-to-end temp controlled. And what we do is as orders come, given we're holding their inventory, it's live on our platform. And so orders can come in one of two ways. One through the marketplace, which is retailer submitted order, and then there's one through the brand side, which is the supplier submitted order. So in either scenario, what that triggers is a set of processes that generates the compliance paperwork and handles the track and trace. It then allows us to, or then permits us to then go contact the retailer to confirm the order. And then we do the pick, pack, and ship come time for delivery. And so from that standpoint, it's relatively more standard from a distribution practices perspective. But then on the back end, what isn't stated as much is everyone loves to talk about the cannabis side of things, but 60% of our California business still operates in physical cash. So there's a huge operation with regards to cash management and just payments in general, given we have a whole collections team, payments and applications team, and cash processing team as well. So there's a pretty large backbone of our business that ensures that people get paid on time too.
Is all that cash processing in-house, or do you contract that service?
Partially. So the cash pickup and processing all happens in-house. So we'll go to the store because it's most efficient for us to do it. Otherwise, you're paying an armored truck service a lot of money just to do a dedicated route. We're already going to deliver products. So when we go for the same destinations, we usually pick up payments too. And, we'll bring it back to our facilities, count it, and then put it in, these industrial size, like bank sized smart safes. And then, every couple times a week, the bank will send a third party armored truck to do a lump sum pickup and send it to the bank and processes it there. So the back end is done by the bank when they intake it into their account. But as far as picking up the little loose change and on an order by order basis, that part's done by us.
Compared to some of the other similar services in the market, how do you stand out ahead of your competition?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we're probably the only distributor at this point with a tech-enabled philosophy and backbone. One is just, do we provide a better quality of service on the delivery standpoint operationally? And then second, do we provide a do we provide a unique differentiated service, not just compete on the same track as everyone else, but do we provide a 10x better experience? And that is really done by the tech side. A lot of folks coming into distribution in general, let alone cannabis, they're operations heavy people, supply chain folks, and so we're kind of more unique in the sense that our exec team comes from backgrounds of tech, but not just tech, but also like supply chain, alcohol, other regulated industries, industrial parts distribution, investment banking, and so we've really tried to compose our team, especially at the decision maker level, to ensure that we're always providing new and fresh services to the industry, not just raising the bar on existing services. We really want to provide a tectonic shift, like a real like order of magnitude difference, and keep raising the bar every time. So yeah, that's kind of how we think about it.
A lot of people talk about being excited regarding using AI at the point of sale or on the customer side of the business, but I think there's a real opportunity when it comes to basically rearranging all of logistics. Do you think that'll happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just given how CapEx intensive logistics is, you don't want to, and not just that, you're a lot of times like when you buy a vehicle or when you set up a warehouse, those are long-term commitments. And so you really want to be sure that there's demand for all that capacity that you're building up. Hiring also is very costly because if you hire too much, you're essentially you have to go fire them and you have to pay severance and run into labor law issues. If you hire too little, you can't fulfill all your orders. So then you're just missing out on revenue and upsetting the customer. And so all of that combined, where AI can provide leverage is on the forecasting and predictive demand side of things to be able to make sure that we're not just accounting for, your typical seasonality or, new brands onboarding or existing market growth, but you're really accounting for, these like these sort of like sub variables that, humans don't really understand, where you kind of need like a large language model to help identify patterns that aren't quite explainable in the human language. So they're kind of just they're kind of I guess like extracted based upon the sort of like underlying trends that occur that only the model understands in that black box. And so yeah, I do think that there's like a big area of improvement. Yeah, I mean even in things like voice recognition for being able to talk to your data. I think that's a big one. A lot of people in supply chain just sit there managing spreadsheets and pivot tables. And if you can just like ask your system, to do some number crunching for you, you pretty much have like you saved a lot of time. So yeah, I think there's even beyond prediction, there's just a lot of like efficiency gains from time saving tools that AI can help with.
Do you find yourself embracing AI tools as much as you possibly could, or do you kind of keep them at arm's length to kind of see how they could be used most valuably?
Yeah, we try to bring it into the company as much as possible like without it creating too much noise. Because there's so many AI tools doing a lot of the same things all the time. And some of them are sort of like hobbyist tools as well, And so, we want to make sure that if we're gonna use a tool, we actually drive, we actually leverage it to its full extent and actually implement it in day-to-day work. There's always like a level of experimentation that's needed with any new tool before it can be widely adopted internally. But we try to make that switch as soon as possible. Otherwise, it's just a big waste of time where everyone's like super excited about 10 different tools, but we never actually apply it to any individual use case at scale. And so, we want to make sure that we actually apply the tools. I think that's been a big one. Another one is probably just people being fearful of their jobs. Like if you introduce too many AI tools all at once, like people start to get a little scared. And we've had that happen to us internally as well. And so it's about managing that sort of communication, where it's really just like a quality of life saver for existing team members, such that you can scale to the next level without hiring. Less so around the fear of cutting out existing teams because of these AI tools. So yeah, it's small little nuances, but they're all really important to make sure AI can be successfully adopted in an organization.
You've had such a history of success after success. Have you ever had a miss?
Yeah, all the time. I had this like music startup app in college. I think it was like fun, but it was like a betting app where it was essentially like FanDuel for music. It was more like a hobbyist app. I think it's still worth building as like a cool, fun tool. Um, Otherwise I think what tends to happen is people focus a lot on the successes or the big failures, but behind this, talk about AI tools. I'm oftentimes at home just like using some of these tools to build little hobbyist projects. And, when I was working at Microsoft, I would go home and just like leverage new, software languages and frameworks just to learn about it, and to keep up with things. And so, I guess the stated intent is to learn, but, there's definitely been a lot of tools I've built that have just like never seen the light of day as well.
That's fair. And I think that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit. As someone who has had, already created and turned over a company, is there any part of you that's kind of nagging at you to go on to the next?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Especially when the going gets tough in cannabis. Um, but I think part of it is that entrepreneurs don't always have the liberty to do that. Entrepreneurs get rewarded for sticking things out, especially in downturn environments, because that's when you can do the most damage or like get the farthest ahead when your competitors give out. And so yeah, we've been through two different cannabis cycles now. It's probably a lot of mini cycles that I'm not even thinking about, but I think our business is pretty well positioned. So, I think we've gone through, in my opinion, a lot of the worst in the cannabis industry. And as new states legalize, as hopefully federal legislative change occurs, it's going to be blue skies from here in the next few years.
Vince, I really appreciate you taking the time. I mean, before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience either knows about yourself or about your work at Nabis?
Yeah, if you're a brand or a retailer looking to work with us in California, Nevada, New York, those are the markets we're in today. Email partnerships@nabis.com or just go to our website and contact us. Otherwise, if you're, a distribution business in another state outside of those, we're looking to partner as well with those businesses. And so, our hope and goal is to be the most expansive, widely accessible distributor across all 50 states, when that time comes. And the faster we can get there, the better. And I think one of the fastest ways is to partner with existing successful businesses in other markets too.
Once you partner with somebody, how long does it take to integrate them into the platform?
It can take up to a year, just given, there's the economic deal that needs to get done. The partners need to meet each other, get comfortable, of course. And then there's the implementation process again, because we're not just building for a new market, we're also trying to work with an existing team and change behavior. So oftentimes it can be an even heavier lift, to partner with an existing business, but well worth the while if it can get us there faster.
Are you going to MJ Biz this year?
This is actually the first year I'm not going, in my 8 years of being in the cannabis space. I'm just, unless rescheduling happens, I don't think I think I'm gonna sit this one out this year.
I've been hearing that from a number of people. I mean, is that what you've been hearing as well?
I think, yeah, I started hearing that people were just kind of taking MJ Biz off, starting like 2 years ago, and then a little more people last year, and then this year I kind of jumped in the water there, on that sentiment too.
Well, I'm sorry that we're going to miss you, but hopefully we'll get a chance to see you while we're out on the road sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me know if you're in New York. I'm on the road too, so there's probably plenty of places we can meet up.
Well, Vince, thank you very much for taking the time. I really do appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks for the time.
All right. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. All right. For Vince Ning, co-founder and CEO of Nabis, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we will see you next week.
Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.